Okay, so I'm going to start by telling you about a friend of mine, Jareen. I've actually known her for a very long time. Known her since I was 5. We did a lot of things. We practically grew up together. And over the years, we've actually become really close friends. And she actually took a lot of pride in her education. She worked really hard for her education and got accepted into Chapman University, a very prestigious university. But unfortunately, after a year and a half, she had to drop because she was in a $20,000 debt after only a year and a half of going to that university. And she's currently going to Fullerton College until she pays off this loan, and so she can go back. And she's part of the 90% of college students that actually has this much debt. And nearly 70% of you new-coming college students actually have severe concerns about how to pay for college. And according to Mark Kanserowitz, publisher of FinAid and FastWeb, said that if you take every single college debt that is in America, it combines itself to a total of $830 billion. And the leading cause of this is loans, but the second leading cause is credit cards. So in this speech, I will educate you, future college students, about how to budget, and by doing this, I will talk about the banking system. I will discuss credit cards, the disadvantages and advantages, as well as how to use them wisely. And I will teach you guys what to do in terms of budgeting while in college during your semester. So the banking system itself can be very complicated. There's a lot of big words, concepts, what's this, what's that. But the basics of the bank is when you apply for a loan and the bank gives you the loan, they need to have the money to back up the loan. But sometimes they do not. But they still continue to give out these loans because that's how they make the profit. The more loans they give out, the more profit they make. And when they need more money, they call the Federal Reserve, and the Federal Reserve calls the U.S. Mint to print out more money to distribute to the government with interest, and then the government taxes us to pay for the interest. So it's this weird kind of constructive web that we're all in. And the second biggest way that banks make their money is through credit cards, which leads me to my second point. Credit cards can be either harmful or helpful depending on the usage of them. And we see today that more and more students are actually misusing the credit cards, which is increasing their existing debt. And a big responsibility as a college student is to get your credit card. According to Torres, first director of the New York Development in Education, he actually said that the biggest thing in terms of development is to get your credit card. And so you guys are going to be starting college, so it's time that you progress as adults and become more responsible. And what better way than become more responsible than keeping and managing your own money? When misusing credit cards and when you use it responsibly, they hurt your credit score. And future employers and insurance look at your credit score as well as your history to determine if you are eligible. And if you are not, they will reject you. And credit cards can be a little complicated, but it's not about going in and signing for the first thing that you see or for the first thing that people offer you. There are simple steps when choosing your credit card. You have to look for a low APR rate and beware of the introduction rates that can increase over time. Look for grace periods so that your creditor can put interest after you pay your balance as opposed to the minute you start purchasing stuff on your credit card. And now that we talked about that, it's important to talk about what you can do in college in terms of budgeting. There's a lot of different things that you have to understand that when you budget, small purchases and small things that you do can add up, either negatively or positively. And in this chart, we can see the average student budget. We can see that the majority of of the spending is on luxuries. And if we move on to the next slide, please. We can see that after you budget, we can see that 40% of the luxuries have decreased to 4%, and that these savings add up to 32%. And this is very important because as adults, you have to start thinking about your future, and with that 32%, you can spend it on retirement, Social Security, insurance, healthcare, and all of that good stuff. So things that you can do are just simple things that don't even need a lot of work. For example, you can go home, you can live at home, you can get a roommate, you can go out and take advantage of the meal plans that they have at most universities and colleges, and you can things to avoid. Obviously, we don't want to see 40% of the luxuries, and I think that's where a lot of students miss out because they think that their money, especially with credit cards, they think that it's free money, and the responsibility that everyone here has to know is that it's not free money and that it's money that you have to pay. So things that you can do in terms of not getting yourself into debt is 1, paying on time, and 2, if you do not pay on time, let your creditors know what's going on so that they don't get the impression that you're irresponsible or lazy. And according to Jan Quintel, President and CEO of the Better Business Bureau of Eastern Washington, Idaho, and Montana, said that the safest way to protect your account in college is through online banking, because as students you're more vulnerable for identity theft as opposed to online banking, with your parents. So it's important that you and your parents work together and talk about credit cards so that you are not a victim of identity theft. In this speech, I educated you future college students how to budget, and by doing so, I talked about the banking system. I talked about the advantages and disadvantages of credit cards, and I also discussed what you can do, what simple steps that you can take in terms of budgeting. My friend Jareen did not know any of this. She just spent a lot of money in terms of education, even though her expenses were well intentioned because they were for education. She didn't really set herself on a budget, and she didn't know where exactly her money was going. And she found out that actually doubled because her original debt was $10,000, and with her expenditure, she actually doubled that within a year. So this is a warning and a wake-up call for you to prepare yourselves so that you will not fall into this.